What's going on, glorious people? Josh here from Brothers Green, and today I'm going to show you guys how to grow your own fruits and vegetables. This is going to be the most simple beginner but epically glorious beginner's guide to growing your own food. So I've been living in the city for many years, but I recently moved to Colorado and I finally have a backyard and I have space to grow. We used to have a roof garden and I didn't have any space, and it's just sad not to be able to grow my own food, and I've been just craving that, just like being connected to nature, being able to grow my own tomato and grab it off the tree and just bite it. So now that I'm here and I have this space, I've just been getting super hardcore into gardening. I'm working on a gardening book right now, beginner's gardening book. But in this video, I just want to show you guys how to get your garden started. So one of the big things to understand about this video is whether you have unlimited access to money or whether you have basically nothing, it's still going to be helpful. So this is not about what resources you have. It's not even about what place you are in. It's just giving you the basics so you feel confident. Even if it's just growing one plant or some herbs, no big deal. So the first thing you want to think about is, okay, what are your limitations? You know, do you have financial limitations? Do you have limitations in terms of sun and space, or do you have unlimited? And so when you understand that, you can start to think, okay, maybe I just want to have like a little garden with some fresh herbs, or maybe I want to go big and all out. And some of those things that you want to understand are growing zones. So every place in the world has a different growing zone. In Colorado, in Denver specifically, I'm 5B. And basically all that means is that it helps you understand what are the lowest temperatures that you're going to get to every single day of the year. So it's like, what are the average low temperatures, because certain things are going to freeze. So in the case of Denver, you know, it can get pretty cold here during the winter, so I can't grow something like a lemon tree. But I can grow apples, which I couldn't grow in somewhere like California, because apples actually need to freeze over and go dormant so they can produce fruit the next year. So if you want to know your growing zone, just go online, search for your growing zone, you enter in your information, your address, and it will tell you what is going on. Now another huge thing is the sun. So the best place for growing is south facing. So the sun spends most of its time up in the south, so for me, south is that way. So I'm gonna have my garden sitting on the south side of my house, which means it's gonna get a ton of sun. If you don't have south, that's okay. There's other things you can do to supplement that, but the more light you can get for most vegetables, the better. So once you understand those things, the most basic thing to get is that you actually have to understand what you want to grow. In my case, I am gonna go kind of balls to the walls all out. I have a greenhouse. I ordered a ton of trees. Actually, I planted apple trees and stuff. But when it comes to vegetables, I'm gonna focus on things like cucumbers, carrots, tomatoes, peppers, onions, herbs, lettuce, celery. I'm pretty much gonna go kind of crazy, but for some people, if you're just getting started, I'd say grow a couple tomato plants and maybe grow like some cucumbers and some herbs and lettuce, and that's a great place to start. Don't overwhelm yourself. I do this just because I want to learn and teach you guys. So the most basic understanding of gardening is soil here, seed here, and water here. When you have those three things plus the sun, that's not all you need, but that's kind of the basic of it. If you have those things, which everyone has access to water, most people have access to soil. If you buy fruit and vegetables in the store, you have access to seeds, and you know, the sun is in the world, so people have sun. So there's a very simple side of gardening, and then of course people get technical where it's like humidity and temperature and what kind of soil. I don't want to overwhelm you guys. I don't even want to overwhelm myself, because I believe that starting out simple is the most powerful and important way to inspire you to get doing something. And once you get into it, if you like it, then sure, go crazy and start adding stuff in and getting more specific. But to start simple. So starting simple just basically means starting with some soil and some seeds. So what I do is, and this is a cool trick that I learned recently. If you get soil like this. So I have an organic. You don't have to do organic if you can't afford it. Organic is a little bit better, but again, if you can't, not a big deal. No one's judging you, and if they are, shame on them, you know, shame on them. So I have this organic seed starter, and it's very important, if you can, to get a seed starter, because it has everything the seeds need to get started, which sounds obvious, but I made the mistake. I tried to start some seeds earlier, where I actually took some soil from the old garden outside and brought it in. And what I learned was that that's actually, it can be okay, but it can be a big problem because there can be bacteria and even insects and things in the soil from your past garden. And maybe you don't see them in there because it's frozen, but once they come in here and the temperature warms up to like 70 degrees, now all of a sudden you're gonna be releasing those things. They can kill your plants and also just get in your house, which is no bueno. So start with a good seed starter. And what's cool is this cost me it's like, you know, $5 or $10 depending on what you get. And this will go a very long way. And then after then, once you have regular soil, you can buy it in bulk and that's much cheaper and stuff. So what I do is I get a big bowl out and I get my little soil situation right here. And I actually pour boiling water over this. And what happens is this is going to hydrate the soil, and it's also going to kill off any bacteria. Now granted, I bought this fresh, so there shouldn't be any, but just in case, it does not harm. And I actually find once you sort of have it nice and moist, it's a really good feeling. And I could probably even go add a little bit more water in here, but it's like, it just feels like good soil. I tried in the past to basically take the dry, put it into a little planter, and then wet it, and it just causes more problems because the thing is, these seeds can be so small depending on, you know, what fruit or vegetable you're planting. Like let's take a tomato seed for example. You know, if you look at a tomato, those seeds are really tiny. So if there's no water in here and you plant it at a certain depth and then you water it, it can kind of wash the seed out and it can cause problems. So I say moisten the soil first, then plant it, and then, you know, you can start watering it and misting it and doing your thing. But again, optional, it seems to really help me. So the next really important thing when it comes to planting is knowing what you want to plant in. And there are lots of options. And actually, I filmed this video a couple weeks ago when I was just learning some other things, and I've learned so much that I kind of reshot it. It's very rare, almost impossible, not impossible, improbable that I ever reshoot stuff on this channel. But I really wanted to give you guys a better guide. I've learned so much in the past couple weeks. It's amazing what you can take in reading books and watching YouTube. You can teach yourself almost anything. So when it comes to actually knowing what you want to plant in, there are lots of different options. The most simple one is just plastic, and they have these plastic planters. You can buy them for almost nothing, and they have little holes at the bottom for drainage, which is very important. If you don't have any drainage holes, water can build at the bottom, and actually you can get root rot and they can kill your plants. There's also these, which I was super excited about. I ordered these on Amazon, and there's these peat planters. They also have a hole in the bottom, and they're made out of material that's decomposable. So is that a word? They're made out of material that will break down in the soil. So what's cool about these is you plant your seeds, and then you can put them directly in the soil. What that does is instead of having to take the plant out, which can kind of shock it, it gets to stay in its little cozy home, and because of that, it doesn't cause as many problems. It doesn't take as long for the plant to accumulate when you put it into the soil. Thing is, these are also small, so typically with planters you're going to have two sizes, one about this size and one about these size, and there's 8 of these guys here, actually 10 of these guys, and they each break off into a little one. And you can get plastic containers about this size, and I'd say they're like almost 3 or 4 times the size. So there's two problems with these guys. So the problem with smaller planters in general is that you have to transfer them after a little. Once the seedlings get to be about this high or so, you're gonna have to transfer them into another pot and then wait until they go out. Now the benefit to that is that because they are small, you can seed a frick ton of seeds, so you can get a lot more. I can plant 10 of these when I can only maybe plant 3 or 4 of these in terms of how much space you have. So if you're limited on space, getting something smaller is great. Now the problem with these peat ones that I discovered is that because of the material they're made out of, they soak up a lot of water. So my plants were drying up very quickly, and even I went away recently and had a friend watching over my plants, and he just maybe didn't know what he was doing and ended up killing all of these beautiful seedlings that I had. So that was very sad when I arrived to see they were all completely shriveled up, and I don't blame him because these are much harder. You really have to watch them. So there's also these guys, which are fairly similar. They're made out of a different material, but They're bigger and they're a little bit easier to plant in. I've had some success using them, and they also are great because they go right into the ground. Again, though, they tend to soak up soak up water, so that can be a little bit of a problem. So what I say is either just use the plastic, because plastic does not soak up water, or if you don't, like, whatever you have around the house is great. So even you can use an egg container, and for things like arugula and salads and stuff especially, you can put soil right in there and have a great time with yourself and, you know, do your thing. Or you can even, I've seen people very carefully, when they crack their eggs, they leave some space and then they put soil in their eggs and they plant things like arugula right in there, and that's just pretty cool because that can go into the ground. So there's also, you can use like a tin can. The biggest thing is you want to make sure you have drainage for something that's going to hold water, moisture in, like a tin can, like, you know, a can of beans. You just drill some holes or poke some holes into the bottom or the sides to make sure the water will come out. When it comes to bigger pots like this, sometimes I'll even add some stones and stuff at the bottom, like rocks, just to make sure there's better drainage, but it all depends on how you feel and what you want to do. Now, before I show you how to plant, one thing that's very important is to understand when to plant. Now, if you live in somewhere like California where you can plant year-round, it doesn't really matter. Of course, different seasons have different planting schedules, but when things are warm enough, they can just go out. But in a place like Denver, we have a very specific growing season. And that season is typically from about May 15th to, depending on, we have a kind of weird weather over here, like October, November. I could probably stretch a lot of things to November. Now there are different crops, so things can go out earlier than May, things that are cool crops. There are certain types of greens and things like that that will grow much better. Things like kale, that actually grow pretty well in the cold. But for the most part, May 15th is the date when you want to actually start bringing stuff out. And what that means is everywhere you live, wherever you live, there's what it's called a last frost date. There's a last frost and a first frost. That's kind of your window right there. So go online, find out when your last frost date is, and that basically means that is the last chance, unless there's some freak crazy storm, that there will be a frost, but basically it will go below freezing. If it goes below freezing when your plants are already out, most of them will die. So you just want to make sure there's no below freezing and that your plants are safe. For me, May 15th, which means I have an opportunity to seed things earlier. If I were just to plant stuff from seed outside, things like tomatoes, they're going to take a while to germinate. So by the time they're ready to go, it's already late in the season. So the best thing you can do is, they say usually, depending on every seed is different, but depending on the seed, for example, these chocolate beauty peppers start seeds indoor 8 to 10 weeks before last frost. So that's about 2 months, sometimes it's 6 to 8 weeks, it depends on the thing, but 2 months before the last frost, which basically means that I will have 2 months of growing inside to get my little seedlings going. So when I bring them out, they've already been growing for 2 months. They only need, you know, a few more months to come to fruit, which is super cool. But again, it depends on what you're growing. Things like lettuce grow very fast, so you could probably sprinkle them outside and be good to go. So understanding your date is a very, very, very important thing for you. But even if you just want to have some fun and just plant some seeds and just see how it goes, like, have fun. The truth is, for me, I've realized growing my food is so much like growing my life, and that's part of the book that I'm working on, is the kind of the balance in between. Like, for example, a seed, if you think about yourself, a seed, it's nothing. You look at it, it just looks like nothing. It's not anything special, but you plant it and you nurture it and you take care of it and it comes out. But when it comes out, it's very vulnerable. You know, it's this little seedling, it can die so easily, but as it gets stronger and stronger and stronger, it can take care of itself a little bit better, and it can withstand harsher things in the world. And that's kind of how I see humans. Like, as we're trying to grow into who we are, it's very vulnerable. Like, say you're a musician, but you never play music for anyone. It's very vulnerable to share that music because people could on it and to get excited, you know, all these things. However, if you allow yourself the opportunity to actually get out there, people can see your beauty inside, and that's kind of how I see seeds. But anyway, let's get back to actually how to get them started. So over here I have a bunch of seedlings going, and this, for example, this cucumber, which I have labeled, a very important thing, make sure you label your seeds, because even if as they get bigger you might know what a tomato plant looks like, there's so many varieties, and it's going to just help you a lot to know what that plant needs, because when they are small, it can be hard to see what's what. But for this, so I just label these. I have some painter tape, write it on there. You can, you know, whatever works for you, you can use like a white Sharpie or whatever. Make sure you label them. It's going to help you out in a big, big, big way. But anyhow, so I have my plant here, and what I like to do is, typically with seeding, is you don't have to do this, but it's much better, is plant 2, maybe 3 seeds. Usually I just do 2 into a container. Especially a smaller container is definitely 2, but a bigger one I can do maybe more if you have enough seeds. And seeds are affordable. Like you can get, you know, a pack of 100 seeds for, you know, a couple dollars. So you usually have plenty of seeds. But what you want to do is plant a couple seeds because you want to see which one's going to be stronger. And sometimes a seed might be a dud. It might not go. So if you're sitting there waiting a couple days for the seed to go and it's a dud, at least you have the other one that will grow out. Which is the seedling. The seedling comes out, the little sprout shoots out. So what I like to do is I just take like a little pan or something and I poke 2 little tiny holes in there. And then I would take my seed, and usually on the back it tells you how deep to plant it. So for example, this kale, you can directly sow seeds starting 2 to 4 weeks before last frost date. So for example, kale, you know, 2 to 4 weeks before the last frost, they're actually okay to be outside because kale is a little hardier. Plant seeds 1/2 inch deep and approximately 3 inches apart, and then thin plants to 12 inches apart when they are 4 to 5 inches tall. So it just tells you what it needs to do. So in this case, this is more planting for in the ground, but I'm gonna plant 2 little kale seeds in there. Just go in, and 1/2 inch if it's a little less, that's not a big deal. It doesn't have to be specific. But then I just want to gently cover them with soil. Don't like pack it down. You can kind of just gently press it down. And if you want, I've been using these squeeze bottles. It's a great way to kind of water when things are smaller. If you're trying to use a watering can, at this point you'll probably wash them out. You can also use a little mister. Boom, boom, boom. Cool. And then what I want to do is I want to let this sit away from direct sunlight until it sprouts out. And what a lot of people like to do is take some sort of plastic covering. So for example, I have saran wrap. I can wrap this in some saran wrap or wrap a whole bunch of things together in saran wrap. And as the sprout starts to come out, as every little seedling comes out, you take it and then you put it in light. But you don't necessarily want to put it in light before, so you can kind of leave it somewhere, you know, somewhere warm. And a good way, if you have the opportunity, you can buy these heating pads, and what that does is it allows the seed to grow faster. So if you put it on the heating pad, the sprouts will come out quicker. What I've been using as a hack is I take my dehydrator and kind of turn it on super low setting and place a bunch of seeds over that, and they tend to shoot out much, much faster. So what do you do once your seed has shot up to life? It's like having a baby, right? It's like a very simple step. And for anyone like looking to, you know, that wants to have a dog or a baby or more responsibilities, planting is kind of a cool step because it's taking care of something that's alive, but if you kill it, you know, you're not gonna feel bad. No, you feel a little bad and it's very sad, but it's not the same responsibility, but it gives you an opportunity to like actually take care of something outside of yourself. Something every morning I wake up and the first thing I do is I'm like, oh, how are my seeds doing? Is everything okay? Does this one need more light? Like you're taking care, you're learning, and it's just kind of a fun way to grow your life a little bit. So once your seedling sprouts out, and let me give you a good example of something that's, you know, a little bit earlier. Let's see, this is so funny because for some reason this is the one thing I did not label. So I'm gonna have, it's like playing roulette or something, I'm just gonna have to guess. So these seeds are quite small, and once they pop out, you wanna make sure they have light. So if you have a south-facing window that gets a lot of light, you can put them in that south-facing window. If you have another window that gets light too, that's great. But the best thing that you can do, if you can afford it, is to get a grow light. So I have a grow light here. This one is okay, Fairy Morse. It's been working fine, but I find because of the way it's structured, it's very long and thin, right? Because of that, like I can't get too many plants under it. Like even these guys, like, you know, that'll give me some light right there, but it's just not giving me as much light as I would like. And the other thing is that you want to make sure that you're not keeping this light on all day. So about 16 hours is good, 16 to 18 hours, turn it off. What I usually do is when I wake up in the morning, turn it on. And when I go to bed at night, I turn it off, and I have that sort of 6 to 8 hour window where they're not getting light. You want to make sure they're not getting light at all times. But this one, this one still works all right. I recently got a new growing light, which is an LED light that I really like, and I like this for a couple reasons. For one, it doesn't overheat, so there's no chance of burning my plants, and for another, it gives me a ton of grow light space. So this thing is like pretty OG, and I got that actually at Costco for like 50 bucks. They were the same price. So we'll see, I might return this, but I'm gonna keep using it for a while. I like to give things a chance. But regardless, one thing you wanna understand about these lights is that you don't want the light too far away from your seedlings. And you can see I kind of made the mistake on some stuff. Like for this guy here, this is a tomatillo. And if you look at this, they're super long. They call it like leggy. It's very long, and the stem is long for the green to get up there. So this is what takes in the light and creates photosynthesis and all kinds of sciencey stuff I'm not going to get into because I don't even remember it from like my middle school days. But these had to grow super tall to reach the light, right? Whereas something like these tomatoes, these look a lot stronger. They're maybe even a little bit tall, but they look significantly stronger than these long, flimsy guys. And with the flimsy guys, they can sort of, you know, blow over and break, and they're just not going to be as strong of a crop. You want something that feels like solid and good. So what you want to make sure is when you have a grow light, that you don't want the plants to be too far away. You maybe want it like 2 inches or so, 2 to 3 inches away, so that way it's not climbing up to the light. And it's good to rotate them too, because you'll see as the sun shifts, plants are alive. So, you know, and there's studies coming out saying that plants feel pain too. So like they're a living organism. You can sing to your plants, you can speak to them, and some people think that's cuckoo and crazy, but there's actually studies where you play classical music to your plants and it actually helps them grow. So pretty cool stuff. I mean, this is life. Don't treat it like it's not life. This is alive. And there's a lot of vegans out there, and they're you know, picketing for things with animals not being killed, and I appreciate that, but don't forget that plants feel too. So we gotta respect the plant. So yeah, make sure that you rotate them, because they're alive, so they will move. Like as the sun moves throughout the day, if you did a time lapse, you'd see them. They're like dancing in the sun, like there we go, there we go. Now another thing, so of course with your grow light, as the plants grow, you want to just kind of move them. Move the grow light up, 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 up. And of course every plant's different size, so there are things that you want to consider with that. Now another thing that I have been really getting into and appreciating is just adding a little bit of gentle wind to these seedlings. So what that's going to do is, because you're not growing outside, you're not having all the same elements inside your house. And wind is a big element, and wind helps make things stronger. Just you blow on them, they might only go a little bit, but it helps actually make them more stronger, more resilient to when you bring them outside. Because when you bring them outside, there's going to be a bit of a shock, and that's going to be another video. I'll talk a little bit about that, but this is more for getting your seeds started, and then in a few weeks or months when I start bringing stuff outside, then I'll give you more information. But what I do is I take a fan, a little fan, and turn it on just on low, and as long as, like, you know, you don't want them toppling over, but if you see them kind of just shaking a little bit, that means that they're getting like a little bit of circulation. It also helps circulate if there's any chance of fungus or something, whatever. Like, it just kind of helps keep fresh air circulating in and keeping them fresh. When I first actually planted these the lettuce here, and basically this lettuce was interesting because with lettuce, instead of planting just a couple seeds, like I just sprinkled a ton on here, and this is just like a little, it's called a Rocky Top mix, lettuce Rocky Top mix, and I planted a bunch of this, and that will just kind of grow out. And this is a great thing if you just want to have a little lettuce for snippets or whatever. You can grow a bunch of it. But when I covered it at first, and I came back after a couple days, because of the moisture, there was this white mold growing, and I kind of freaked out. I later learned that mold is okay. Avoid it if you can, but some people don't like covering their plants with plastic wrap because mold will develop, but it's not a bad mold. And once I just added some water and some air and kind of open them up, the mold went away. So no big deal. If you get some mold in your plants, do not freak out. You can also, of course, always go online. It's so easy now in Google. You type in like, my plants have this thing on them, and it just tells you what to do. Of course, people have different information, but you sift through it and you figure it out for yourself. So once your seedlings come up, you know, you want to give them some wind if you can, and of course you want to give them water. But how do you know how much water to give them? Now, that was something, it's something I'm still working on every day, but what I've kind of come to understand is that, you know, the top is going to dry out first, because, you know, with the elements and the sun and stuff, the topsoil will dry out. So even if the top's a little bit dry, it doesn't mean that there isn't water in the bottom that I can drink from. So what I like to do is just kind of take my finger, and I don't do it to every single plant because I water them typically around the same. So I take my finger and I kind of press it down, and if it feels like cold and a little bit moist, you're good. You don't need these things soaking. You don't want them soaking in water. You just want to have a little bit of moisture so it can drink something. It's like when you go for a drink, are you just like in the shower, mouth open, like, you know, or you just like nice gentle stream, you know, from a cup or whatever in your mouth. You know, you don't want to overwhelm these plants. So what I do is I, you know, just throughout the day, I check them out. Usually I water them, maybe twice a day. In the morning, I'm like, how are they looking? And then at night, I kind of check them out. Sometimes middle of the day too. But I don't give them too much. I just take my little squeeze bottle and give it a little spray. There are also watering trays like this one. Technically, you can actually pour water into the bottom, and from the bottom it will soak up. And one advantage of that is that when you're seeding stuff, when you're seeding something, you might need to be adding extra water if it dries out. Otherwise, the seed will not germinate. So if you're seeding stuff, instead of watering from the top, which can move the seed around, sometimes it can be helpful for the bottom. It's not perfect, and you can do from the top, but there's things that help you along the way. And I'm just trying to give you different options to help you along the way. Okay, so you know how to water, you know how to grow these seeds. Now what happens when 2 seeds sprout out, which is likely in most of the cases, most of my seeds, they're good seeds, they germinated. Actually, before I even say that, I should quickly talk about seed buying. So I bought a bunch of organic heirloom seeds. If you see a seed packet that says non-GMO, like these, that's cool, but that means almost absolutely nothing, because the GMO seeds that are available are to mass corporations and Monsanto and all that stuff. So even if it says non-GMO, it's more for the marketing thing, because people like seeing that non-GMO, but all seeds you're gonna buy are, from my understanding, are gonna be non-GMO. So I got these organic seeds. I've got these kale. Some of these are from Rebel Garden. You can go on Amazon and get like a packet of like 12 variety, or you can go to your market, your flower gardening store, and pick out the ones that you like. It's really up to you. Heirloom basically just means it's a seed that for many, many, many years, it's a long time, but for many years has been producing a very good and consistent crop. So I used to wonder like, oh, heirloom tomatoes. It just means that it's a consistent crop that's been tried and true, tested over the years. If you can't go to organic, that's not a big deal. And if you can't afford seeds, who cares? You buy tomatoes, right? You can take tomatoes, you can take out the seeds, dry them out a little bit and then plant them. Or even you can take a tomato slice. I've seen, this is pretty cool. You can slice a tomato into a slice, put that in soil, and actually sprout seeds. So all your food, not everything, but for the most part, most of your food has the ability to give you seeds. So if you're at the market and you bite into an apple, you got a little apple seed, so save those things. You can save them up throughout the year, especially buying organic food that you like, and then you end up with seeds. Cool. So what happens when your seed, you got 2 seeds that sprout out, and you only want 1 tomato in here, so what do? Well, it's very simple. You look at which one is more powerful. So in this case, this tomato here, this one looks a little stronger than this one, and you snip the other one. You could try to split them and plant them, and listen, some people do that, but typically you don't want 2 plants growing in here, because they're going to both be competing for water and nutrition and everything. So you snip it. You just snip the tip, and then you let this one grow. And one of the interesting things about seeds is when they first start out, you're not going to know what they are, because typically, especially with vegetables, they all have these little generic leaves that pop out. The generic leaf comes out, and then from there starts to form its true leaves. So you can actually see on this tomato that there are 2 generic leaves, and then you can actually see, yeah, that's a tomato. So that's something to keep in mind. That's why I like to label them, because at first when they sprout, you still don't know what they are, and then they slowly, come to be. And then at that point, you just want to make sure you're giving them water, of course, and light, and giving them the proper environment, so that in 6 to 8 weeks or 8 to 10 weeks, they're ready to go outside. Again, another advantage of these big ones is that I don't have to repot them. I should be able to, for most vegetables, keep them in here until they're ready to go outside. If something gets too big, it's not a big deal. You just get some other bigger container, and then you go from there. Make sure you watch your plants, you take care of them, you're watering them, you're doing your stuff. But let's say you don't have seeds, you still want to grow stuff. What are your options? So there are lots of options, and one of my favorite options is to actually take things from the market that grow themselves. This is the most coolest, simple but coolest thing that kind of continually blows me away when it comes to gardening, is that I can take scallions from the market, like so, put them in a little cup or jar or whatever with some water and on the root side, and they will just continue to grow. You don't necessarily want to keep them in direct sunlight, but they do need sunlight, of course, and they will just continue to grow. And then I can plant these in the ground and continue to grow them. Now, a lot of people know about scallions, but what I didn't know about until recently was celery. I can take, say you have a huge celery stalk, right? You cut off just the bottom where the roots would be, just like, an inch, half an inch. You place that in water, and then celery will literally pop out and continue to grow. And then at that point, actually, like in this case, I replanted the celery. I've been doing it with a couple of them, but for this one, I replanted it. So you can also stick it right into soil as well, or you can just use the water. Potato is another great example. If you take a potato, all these little ears, the kind of weird looking alien things that pop out where you're like, what is that? You can actually cut pieces of the potato off and plant those ears and they will become another potato. So every piece of life has the ability to create more life within inside of it, right? Also avocado, you maybe did this trick in school. I'm sprouting an avocado. I've got a mango seed that's growing here. So there's so many things, and my goal with this series, I do hope you subscribe, and you can also check out my Instagram account where I'm going to be doing some more updates and stuff. You Enjoy Life. My goal with this is to really inspire you to grow your own food and to see the benefits of growing your own food. Because if you can grow your own food, even simple things, it will elevate your cooking and your life in so many ways. And I want to make this as accessible and simple as possible for you. So follow along. I'm putting out more videos on different things that you can grow and the next stages of gardening and building beds and all kinds of stuff. But anyway, it's been a pleasure. You guys rock. We'll speak soon. Peace.